Okay. All right. So how's everyone doing? Yeah, great. Okay. So how many of you have worked with REST APIs or Python or Flask or any combination of them? Cool. So like three, two, three. Okay. Okay. So not that many people. So we're all pretty new to this. So that's pretty good. Hopefully my talk will give you some background on what these words are. So first, let me actually explain what all this is. So what is a RESTful API? So a REST is it's a protocol called representational state transfer, and it's a way to basically get information off of a web server to a client in a very basic way. And an application programming interface is an API, and that's a way to access basic methods really easily within your code, so you don't have to write everything yourself. So even if you think about it, even when you call like something like strcat or strconf in C, that's part of like C's API. So what are the elements of a REST API? So a REST itself is a protocol. So it means that it has to have client-to-server communication. So what this means is that you yourself, or what you're viewing, is a client, and the server is what you're accessing. So is everyone here familiar with client and server? So I'll have to explain it. Okay, cool. The other thing is that it's stateless. So that means that if you put in one type of a put request, it won't modify the next concurrent GET request. So they can operate independently of each other. And it's also cacheable, and that means that the web server itself can cache things as you go. So it can store data for a limited amount of time, and it can give you previous data. So not everything isn't necessarily, it doesn't immediately delete itself. It's also a layered system. So that means that there's application layers sitting on like different levels, and I'll demonstrate that as I do my demo. But it means that different methods can do different things depending on the way that your API is kind of architected. And it's a uniform interface, so that means that it can be called across a lot of platforms, across a lot of devices. So, well, I was going to quickly mention, here, let me actually just type this in. Okay, so these are basically the four methods in any given REST API. So there's a post, a get. Can you guys read that? No? Okay, let me try this. How's that? Better? Yes. Okay, cool. So there's a post, a get, a put, and a delete. So these are the four methods that the REST protocol uses in order to communicate data between your client and your web server. So you can just, and each of these have a response token too. So if you ever notice, like, when you have a 404 message, that comes up a lot, and that means that there's nothing found for that given put request that you put when you typed in the URL. So that's just one example. And you usually don't see 200 messages because 200 means everything's okay, and the content you've asked for when you type in the URL, it just shows up. So another thing I'm going to go into briefly is JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. Has anyone worked with JSON before? All right, cool. So okay. So really quickly, JSON is just a way that it's a way that files are structured. So if you can think of it, if you've heard of XML, it's just an alternate form. It's just a different form. It was originally used like just for JavaScript, but it can be called it's language agnostic, so it can be used just about anywhere. And I'll be using it within my Python code. So I'm going to quickly touch on what I'm going to be using with Python and Flask. So well, I'm sure everyone knows that Python is a programming language. And I'll be using these three packages within Python in addition to Flask. So Flask is basically a web framework. That means that it can handle when I was talking about the REST APIs, it can handle all of those methods, and it's a really easy way to integrate everything that REST can do, so put, post, delete, and update within Python itself. And not only can you call those methods using that, but you can also create your own API with Flask. And I'm not going to be using SQL because I don't think I have enough time to get to that. But for Python, I'm using virtual env, which is creating a virtual environment, JSON, which is another package just to read and write to JSON files, and requests, which is one way to pull data off of a web server. So if you guys have computers right now, that'd be really cool. If you like get them out, and you could go to my project code, which is right here. This is the URL. I think I posted on like the Facebook. I don't know if anyone reads that. But if you clone this, you'll be able to work with the files I'm working with, so you won't really get lost. But yeah, I'll just give everyone a moment to do that. If not, I'm hoping you all have Python on your computer. Hopefully, yeah, okay. So you can just clone the URL down there, and then you should be. Oh shoot! Yeah, let me do that. Wait. Yeah, that sucked. Okay. You can just if you type in just github.com and then slash and then just this part. No, let me choose the whole thing. So we'll give everyone a couple more minutes to do that. Maybe. You good? Okay. You just let me know if you're put like a thumbs up if you had a chance to. Okay. Thumbs up. No. Okay. Did everyone get a chance to get it? If anyone says no, just yell no. No. Okay. Okay. Yeah? Alright, cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of try to redo the entire thing I did just really quickly with you guys so you can kind of understand what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is install virtual env, which is the Python package. So if you see pip, it stands for Python package installer Python, something like that, I don't know. But it lets you install Python packages in the command line. So what you want to do is just open up your command line and type in, oh, you might have to use sudo, you might not. I have to use sudo every time because I mess something up. But you type in sudo pip install virtual env. So if you can do that, I will do it as well, even though I already have it. But okay, so I already have it installed, but that's basically the message you should get is either requirement already satisfied or installed. So once you have virtual environment installed, so what virtual environment does is that it creates exactly what it's called, like a virtual environment within your Python project. So that way you don't have to keep installing a bunch of extra libraries on your local machine, and it can just be installed within one virtual environment session. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to activate the virtual environment, and we do that by taking the second line right here, virtual env, then you type that in, and it's going to install like a very basic, the most basic of like setup, most basic Python packages that you need, and then we're going to activate our virtual environment, which is done with the next step right there, which is source venv bin activate. I'll just type it in so you can read it from here too. Let me do this. And after you type that in, you should notice that you're now, like, there's a venv on the bottom. Okay, yeah, on the bottom left, you see how it says venv? That means that we're now working within a virtual environment. Okay. Do that so it gets up a bit higher. So the next thing we want to do is we want to install the packages that we need for this project. So to do that, I'm going to be installing the following 3 packages, and then I'll explain the next line later. So pip install some Flask. And then pip install requests. So now that I have those 3 packages installed, I want to write it to, wait, sorry. Okay, so the next thing, another good practice of Python is one, like what I mentioned, is just using virtual environment. The other is writing all your package installs to a requirements.txt. So the easiest way to, so requirements.txt contains all the Python packages required to run your program. And the easiest way to do that is you just type in the command right there, pip freeze, and then you give the cat symbol, the less than, I don't know what it is, and then type in requirements.txt, and that'll write all your currently installed packages to a text file. So we'll do that right now. Okay, so I just typed that in, and now if I list here, you'll see a requirements.txt, and that contains all the things that it installed in order to run what I want to run. So now that we have that, I'm going to start writing some code. So I have the entire thing that I've written so far right here. So if you ever get stuck, I'm just going to be kind of working with this. Unfortunately, one problem that I did have is what I wanted to do was get actually, let me get into that right now. So for this project, what I was going to do is I was going to pull from the newest subreddit postings of any given subreddit. I wanted to pull all the Imgur links out and create a web page that had all of them. So that's kind of what I have right. Whoops. That's kind of what I have right here. I'm really bad at HTML, so I can figure out how to frame the frames right. But you scroll down, you have all the pictures. So that's kind of what I'm going to be making today. But the way we're going to do that first is I chose Reddit specifically because a lot of APIs that you want to call, like Twitter, Facebook, or anything like that, you need to use this thing called OAuth. And what OAuth does is it's an authentication thing. So it's kind of hard to explain for a first timer. So you get tokens, you get a generated token, and you have to send your token to Facebook's server, and they authenticate it, and they send you a token back, and you take that token, you append it to a URL, and that's how you get your request. But I thought that would be just a bit way too in-depth. So what I decided to do is, if you just go to Reddit and you pick any given subreddit, right, and you just append .json to the end of the subreddit, it returns this entire, can you read that? Okay. So it has this entire JSON file, which is what I mentioned earlier. So it's just a file containing the entire file structure. And what we can do with that JSON file is, first you can use this thing called JSONlint, which kind of validates it, and it kind of shows you the structure too. So I just go to jsonlint.com, and I pasted that, all the data I got from there. So here you can see that the way that the file is structured is that there's something called data, and within all the data there's children, and each of those children also have another data point. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see a URL right there. And then this has an Imgur URL, which if you type that in, oops, it gives you the picture that you were looking for. So what we want to do is from that big JSON file structure, we just want to get these images. And we're going to be doing that with the JSON library inside of Python. So what I wanted to do with you guys was actually call the newest subreddits and immediately pull data like that. But the issue I had with that is that Reddit limits the amount of calls you can make to their server, and I guess when I was trying it out yesterday, I ran out, so my IP is blocked. So what I did do is I copied the entire file, and I pasted it into a folder. Okay, so I made a folder called datasets, which if you clone the repository, you'll see it there too. What happened? That's So if you go into datasets, you'll see that there's that same exact file that I got off the internet. So if just for the sake of the demo, you can probably do this because if you run out of, if your IP gets like blocked from doing requests, it's no fun because I can't teach you how to do the rest of it. But so I have all of this data. So back here. Okay. So the first thing I want to do in any Python script is you first want to write your import. So this is the same thing as it would be in like Java or something. So in our case, we used Flask, requests, and JSON were the three packages we installed. So all we want to do is we want to import okay, yeah. Oops. So we want to import Flask, JSON, and request. And the first way that it's formatted is just saying that from like, so what you can do is if you don't want to import the entire file, because it's like a huge file, you can specify what exactly you want. That's kind of what I did differently in that first line than I did in the second and third one. Is that good? Okay. And then, so when you create any basic Flask application, you first want to give it, so Flask is that web framework we were using, so we want to give it like just this command right here, which just says app equals Flask __ name. And when you have two underscores in front of something in Python, it treats it differently as opposed to just a static function name. So I'm just going to paste that in here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a very basic main method. And that's what this main method is. So this is another one of the things where you use two underscores in Python. And if underscore name equals main, and then you can just do that. And then all this is going to do is start to run our app. So when you write more complicated Flask files, or when you make more complicated Flask projects, you generally want to structure your files differently, which is why I have an app folder here, and then within app I have static and templates. So templates is where you want to keep all your HTMLs, and then static is where you want to make the calls between the HTML and the Flask routes itself. And then within them you want to put your files too. And then you also want to have like initialization files, but it can get really complicated, but I just want to keep it simple for now. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define a route. So what routes are? Routes are basically the endpoints that you want to call within your Flask application. So for example, if you type in a URL, right? So for example, here we have -all, which is going to give us everything on that URL that we want. So if you type in like facebook.com/messages, you know, it takes you to messages. The way it does that is that there's routing going on in the back end. So we're going to say, just copy paste it. And then so this is a way that Flask knows that this is the route that you're going to do. That's why there's an @ sign in front. Otherwise, you usually don't see that in Python at all. This is just a Flask specific thing.
Decorator?
Yeah.
It's not. Oh, the decorator.
Integrator?
Decorator?
Decorator?
Yeah.
Ah.
It's like running a function with a function.
So, okay. It's like lambdas kind of?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm using this one. So then you're gonna want to make a function within that. So we're gonna have to have a function here that gets. I'm just gonna call it getPost because that's what I want to call it. But that's the name of the function declaration right there. And then from there, what we want to do is we actually want to do something with this route. So we're given a route, but we don't have any information going to it, right? So what I did is I wrote a function right here called getAll, which gets the which gets the data. So I'm just going to paste that function here. So what I did is that I just pointed it to the datasets folder, and I said that's the file name, and I'm opening it. This is the way you can open files in Python, and that's the file name. And then what this does is JSON.load loads the file that I passed in as a JSON, and that's all it's doing right there. And it's going to return that JSON file. Okay. So the next thing you want to do is, this might get a bit complicated, I realize this. So, where is it? Where is it? Okay. So what this is going to do right here is this calls the getAll method that we defined up in line 8. So right here we define this method, and here we just call it. So when this happens, it's going to return all, and all is going to be passed to A. And that's just a really easy way to do functions in Python. And then I'm just going to declare, actually I don't even think I used this list at any point. Yeah, I don't, never mind. So the next thing I did is, in order for the web page to actually display something, it needs to have some kind of HTML form. Otherwise, when you return things on your route, it's just going to display like an empty page. So that's what I wrote right here. Is like, this is like inline HTML in Python, which is probably not like good practice at all, but it works for the sake of demos. So what this does is, when you have so in Python, the way you can declare strings, you can use single quotes or you can use double quotes. And if you want to declare multi-line strings, you use triple quotes. So right here, I have 3 quotes, and what I'm saying is that this is just a doc type HTML, and it's just creating a head, and then this is the title. So demo, just give it a title name, head and body. And then what's going to happen is that my body is going to be where I pull the images from. So that's going to have to be unique for each of these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go parse through the JSON file to extract all the images. And I'll kind of explain this part as I go. Okay. So what am I doing here? Okay, so when I got this A value, which is the JSON that we returned, if we go back here, we notice that the way it was structured was, we first saw all the data that we wanted was nested within data, children, and then data, and then each of these data points has something unique. So what we wanted to do is we want to get to those points itself. So the way that in Python you can deserialize JSON objects is by calling, within A, you can call what you're looking for. So if you use separate arrays to do nested operations like this, so we want to call all the children within data. If we go back here, so we have data and children. So what we want to do first is we just want to extract all of those, and we want to operate within each of the lists, or each of the URLs that we see between those. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by just this for loop. And the way that this works, it's kind of like a for each, if you've used for each loops before. But it's going to say for link in that nested structure, right? And then we're going to make a new variable. And variables in Python, you don't have to declare like int, or you don't have to specify what type they are. So here you have each URL equals link, and then we say data URL. So what this first line did right here, 32, is that it pulled each of these data points, right? So we have one here. If you scroll down, we have another one, and then so we have a lot of these. But what we want to do is we want to pull the image from each of these. So to do that, we go in and we say data URL. So if we just had this, Let me try to get that. No. Okay, I copied something wrong. But, oh no, okay. So if you go down, we'll look for the URL. Okay, that might be why. Okay, so this is the URL that we're looking for, right? And if you look, it shows up a bunch of times. But we're gonna extract that with this line right here, and that's kind of what I was talking about. And then what we want to say is that we want to separate the GIFs from the static HTMLs. And the way I'm doing that is if not .gif in each URL. So this is a way to the way we're gonna like separate the image links is like if there's not a GIF feed. Oh no, what is that? Oh no, oh no. Wait, okay.
Press Alt F4.
Alt F4. It doesn't sound safe. I don't even know if there's an Alt button on this thing. But so this is the way that we're going to structure we're declaring strings as the HTML objects. So the way that we're doing string concatenation here in Python is I'm just calling two breaks and then image source, and then I'm calling this URL that we extracted, and then I'm just adding these styling elements within it. And then otherwise, if it doesn't have the GIF D in it, that means that it is a GIF. So that's what. So then right here we use iframes instead of static images. And then I also created just these basic strings which kind of help us organize it a bit more. So HTML, so we had an HTML start, so I also wrote an HTML end. Oh no, this is not going on. Okay. And I forgot to mention earlier, but you do have to instantiate I created empty strings for this JPEG list. So what this JPEG list is going to do is that it's going to just add up, it's just going to concatenate every single of those embedded URLs into one list. And it's going to be formatted in a way that you have two breaks, the image, and the styling elements with it. So we have that. So now what we want to do is, the way that Flask works is that it's going to display whatever is returned. So what we want to return is that full HTML page. And we're going to do that by using this line right here. And now, if we put my main further out. What's missing? So, okay. So now if we go back and look at what we basically made, is that first we have a getAll method, which is opening our local folder and pulling that JSON file. Otherwise, I'd use this if my IP wasn't banned, I'd use this request method, which it just gives you just pass in the URL, and request will return it, and then this is going to return a JSON version of that file. So it's going to be parsed, serialized as a JSON. And then, so we returned all, and then from get post, what we did is we just called that file, and then we created our HTML, and then we parsed through the file that we initially called, and got all the image links and put them into an HTML document. So now if we save and run this, it should work. Probably won't. So if I type in Python live demo, oh no, this is mashy. So that one thing about Python, I think everyone knows this, but it's white space delimited. So that means that you have to use like tabs and spaces in order to delimit things in Python. And as nice as it is, sometimes it gets really annoying because you have errors like this, and you don't know where they came from. Where did that go? Okay, for the sake of the demo, I'll just call the one that works. So now what it does is that it served what we wrote onto our local host. So what this means is we can just copy this into the browser, and we can paste it. And so right now this doesn't do anything, right? But because we organized everything within our routes. So if we call the route that we specify, oh wow, that's awkward. So if we call, okay, there we go. So if we call the route that we specified, it should load what the things that we wrote in here. So if you look at the source of this page, you'll see it has it's exactly as how we specified it within within the function that we wrote right here, which built our HTML and returned this. So basically, what it did is that it returned that string as an HTML document, and when you view the page, you view it as an HTML, which is why you can see it up here. So that's what we have.
Owl.
There's an owl. Yeah, this would have looked a lot cooler if my Reddit thing didn't get blocked, but yeah. So that's one thing we can try.
The hell is that?
What? It's a cat.
Oh. A lynx.
I don't know. And yeah, otherwise, I don't know why I can't get the iframes to load bigger, but. So that was pretty much a really fast tutorial on how to use Python and Flask. Does anyone have any questions, or is anyone stuck? Because if you are, you can just look at the source code, and that'll work. Anyone? Okay. All right. Is there any ACM closing announcement?
No, I think we're just selling books now.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm still wondering why we have this.
I mean, if you have any more questions on how to use Flask or something, or more extensively, just let me know. Because that was like a super fast Flask thing. But I've written some more like complicated stuff, like
I just wonder.